Huddersfield man helps solve 700-year mystery featured in Channel 5 documentary. The professor's findings are set to feature in a Channel 5 documentary. Professor Tim Thornton, Jason Watkins, and Tracy Borman. A Huddersfield professor has worked to shine a new light on the mystery surrounding the Apos princes in the Tower and Apos. During the Wars of the Roses, fought between the houses of York and Lancaster for control of the throne of England, power changed hands many times. Towards the end of the wars, King Edward V was deposed by his uncle, who became King Richard III. King Edward, who was 12 years old, along with his 9-year-old brother Richard, Duke of York, then entered the Tower of London in 1483, only to be never seen again. Eventually King Richard himself was deposed by King Henry VII, who established Tudor rule throughout England. However, the mystery of the princes of the Tower has been the subject of a number of stories and conspiracy theories. The most famous tale of all was retold by William Shakespeare in his play Richard III, which said they were murdered on the orders of their uncle, the king. There have been arguments among historians for centuries over whether Richard III was guilty of the murder, with many of Richard and Apos defenders saying his image was slandered by enemies following his defeat and death at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485. Their uncle, the king. Now, Professor Tim Thornton of the University of Huddersfield has discovered documents linking one of Edward V and Apos possessions to powerful figures who were thought to be implicated in the murder plot. A wealthy London woman, Margaret Capel, left behind a will, 33 years after the death of the princes, which said that she and her husband, Sir William Capel, owned Edward V and Apos chain. This would have been a valuable item strongly identified with the prince. The identification of the chain is significant as powerful men of that time wore collars or chains made out of precious metals as expressions of their identities, says Professor Thornton. These chains would have carried symbols or badges of their associations and loyalties and of who they were, so this is a very personal possession of the king, clearly identified as his, and it is in the hands of Margaret Capel. Key to this is the fact that Margaret was the sister-in-law of Sir James Tyrrell, who allegedly confessed to organizing the murders of the princes on the orders of King Richard. This confession has been challenged by many historians and members of the Get All the Latest and Breaking News in Yorkshire by signing up to our newsletter here, public who believe Richard was wrongly accused. It is believed a personal item such as this would not have been given up voluntarily and may have been kept as proof the deed was carried out. According to Professor Thornton, this is an exciting development in the case. He said, there are various possible reasons for the chain passing into the hands of the Capel family. Some are neutral or benign, perhaps part of a process of dispersing the goods of the princes once their status had changed. But the connection with Sir James Tyrrell adds to the probability that the two boys had died in the way that has traditionally been described. Additional evidence linking the chain, the Capels and the traditional story of Richard and Apos guilt is the fact that William Capel and Apos' lawyer was John Moore. His son, Sir Thomas Moore, wrote the first account to pin the disappearance and deaths of the boys on King Richard, Tyrrell and other accomplices. Earlier research already revealed that Sir Thomas Moore knew the sons of one of Tyrrell and Apos' alleged accomplices, and now he has been linked to the family possessing the only known memento of the former king. Professor Thornton said, none of this is conclusive, but it adds considerably to the evidence that connects Sir James Tyrrell and the story told by Sir Thomas Moore about the fate of the princes, and through a physical object that would have been in the tower at the. However, Professor Thornton believes that this debate will continue to rage in the future. He added, historians do not work to the principle of beyond reasonable doubt, because we have inevitably limited evidence time of these terrible events. We cannot interview suspects or conduct forensic investigations at crime scenes, so we have to work on the balance of probabilities. There are still good arguments in favor of Richard III, but the balance is shifting towards his guilt. Professor Thornton and Apos research will feature in a new documentary and Apos Princes in the Tower, a damning discovery and Apos on Channel 5. The documentary also features actor and keen historian Jason Watkins as well as historian and chief curator of historic royal palaces Tracy Borman.